Tere õhtust! Ma kõigepealt paari sõnaga tutvustan eesti keeles, mis täna saama hakkab ja siis lülitan meie õhtu esimeses osas üle inglise keelele, sest et meil on täna väga mitmekeelne üritus, et me kombineerime siin eesti keelt, islandi keelt ja inglise keelt. So good evening, everybody. I'm really glad you made it here through this heat. And I'm really happy that today we will have a really multilingual event because we will be talking and reading with in English first, then there will be reading in Icelandic, and then in Estonian, and then in English again. So today I'm very happy to welcome here our current writer in residence, Þórdís Helgadóttir from Reykjavik, Iceland. Þórdís is here as part of our Nordic-Baltic residency program, which we have been able to do thanks to the Nordic Culture Point and their support. It includes 5 writers from Nordic and Baltic cities of literature, namely, as the results turned out, from Reykjavik and Vilnius. So Þórdís is already our 3rd resident of this program, and she's been here from the beginning of June. Right. And secondly, I'm very happy that we can hear and see again our current city writer, Maarja Pärtna, who has been doing a brilliant job representing Tartu as a really international city during this already half year. And Maarja has been in contact with several of our residents and our foreign guests here. So first, we're going to do a small discussion round, and then we will hear some poetry from Þórdís, then some poetry from Maarja, and then Þórdís will read a prose piece in the end. So to begin with, you have been here for 1.5 months already. Do you feel like a local?
No, a little bit. It's, I think, like, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been so precious. And Tartu feels very welcoming. It feels like a very, lovely, comfortable sized city. It's beautiful. Reminds me of Reykjavik a little bit. It's the same size. So it's like a process of discovery. Like every day you're a little more local. I very much enjoy having like a whole 2 months. It's so precious to get to know a place. But no, it'd be presumptuous to say I feel like a local.
Well, I'm really glad you've been enjoying your time here.
Absolutely.
And the feeling will come in time.
Little by little, yeah.
But as for writers' residences, how do you feel that, what does it mean for you? Is it just getting to know a place or having the time for yourself or a combination of those? Or how does it work for a writer to be in a residency?
I think it's beneficial, like on a number of levels. Like first of all, just getting the time away from the daily grind. I have 2 kids at home, and time to time I have a day job and just like responsibilities, and then to get away from a time and just concentrate on writing. And also, like it's difficult. It can be lonely and it can be challenging also, that you have to have nothing else to do. You have no excuse and you have to just grapple with your writing. And then I've always, like in my work, I draw inspiration from places. And I've written actually about, like, I'm obsessed with just the concept of traveling and belonging and being an outsider. And you know, that's one thing. And then just like you need the juice, like you need something new, like to inform your writing. So I very intentionally decided to come here and lay aside a big project I was working on and just do a project inspired by Tartu and drawing inspiration and I had no idea what I was gonna do. And that's scary also, but it's coming together. And now it's shaping up to be a novella, hopefully published next year.
And hopefully translated into Estonian at one point.
Oh, I would love that. I would so love that. Yeah.
Because it's always, it's always interesting to see how the impulses that your own surrounding, your own everyday surrounding, which impulses it creates to others.
Yeah.
For those to whom it's not everyday.
Yes, it's interesting. I think because Reykjavik has now become like in the last decade or something, like it's now a tourist destination, and it didn't used to be. So like it's interesting that now randomly in literature I will run into like short stories set in Reykjavik, and I'll be surprised. And it's very, very interesting. The outsider's eye. It's scary also because I'm afraid somebody is gonna like find some errors. Like, no, this street does not turn onto that street. And I'm like, okay, you need to be careful.
But then again, it's not a tourist guide.
It's not
literature.
It's literature. That's true. It's a very good point.
How about you, Maarja? You have also been recently to a couple of residencies. Does it feel the same how Þórdís explained it, or what have your impressions been, or what was your main benefit from being in? You were in Gothenburg, right?
Yes.
And in Nida.
Yeah, I applied to 2 residencies last year and got accepted to both. So one was in Lithuania on the Curonian spit, and the other one was in Gothenburg. And it was kind of a similar experience, I think. But these 2 places actually affected me in very different ways. So I'll be reading a couple of poems from a new manuscript later, and the other thing was that when I was in Nida, in a small former fishing village on the Curonian spit, I really got inspired by the environment, and this got me thinking about my own bodily experiences and feelings relating to places. But when I was in Gothenburg, it really got me thinking about memory texts and how we create memories, and also being in a more affluent society got me also thinking about my own experiences with poverty in Estonia. So these are 2 very, very different experiences for me. But I've been interested in place-based writing for a while now, and I have moved towards disconnecting the texts from the physical environment. And I don't really worry about getting the place names wrong because it's just I don't know. I don't worry about these things anymore, because I feel like the texts it can stand on its own, and I don't necessarily need to like connect it to or people don't have to realize that this is written in this particular space, and they don't have to know the place. But they can, just read the text and be in the text as a place. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just talking the other day to one of the other Icelandic residents who was here a few months ago, and he said that both him and one other person were also like drawing very heavily on Tartu for their work, and just the house, like where the residency is located. And he was like, yes, there's going to be this 1 year where there's going to be a ton of books in Iceland published with heavy Estonian influence. So I was like, that's so much fun. It's so exciting. So he's like, yes, we should meet up and do something together. Like
that would be brilliant.
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Yes. There has been Icelandic literature published in Estonian, but not too much actually. So hopefully it would trigger a wave of translations as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things also about the, cities of literatures, to create these connections. And you meet cool people, like cool writers here, and, it's...
Yeah, I do have one follow-up question to you. So how does being in a foreign language environment affect what you write when you're in a residency?
That's a very good question. How does it affect you?
Well,
let me turn it back on you.
I think it somehow makes me see some obvious things in my language from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of a hard thing to describe in more detail, but I feel it kind of sharpens my sense of language. But in a way, it also disconnects me from Estonian, of course. And there's one Estonian writer whose books I always bring with me. This is Aare Pilv. I always carry Aare's poetry collections with me when I go abroad. And there's something in the way that he uses language which helps me be connected with Estonian.
So you can go there to ground you again in your language.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I brought we have one Nobel Prize winner in literature in Iceland, is Halldór Laxness, and I actually have with me his magnum opus, it's called Independent People. It is like gold standard, most beautiful Icelandic text in the world. So I have that on my my desk. But I find I quite enjoyed just like the alienation and the discovery process. So just like going to the store and I figured out what some foods are, and this is like this continual little discovery. It's just like personally, I very much enjoy that. I don't know. I think I'm not able to put into words specifically what's happening there, but it's just enjoyable. It's fun.
As a side note, Þórdís is doing really good job in the Estonian pronunciation.
Oh, thank you.
This is something that usually foreigners cannot handle.
My favorite word is ö. It was also the first one I learned because it's so easy. And then my other favorite word is porgand, like a carrot. I don't know why, I just really like that word.
The combination of sounds.
And it sounds like a carrot somehow. I don't know. Yeah.
That's interesting.
No, it's a fascinating language. I'm very delighted by Estonian language.
How do people perceive Icelandic language and culture? If you get, as you said, there's been growth of tourism thanks to the texts and residences. So is it if you see a representation of your own culture and language and people's understanding of it, is it an alien thing to look at, or?
Yeah, I think so. It's like because it's so small, like we are hyper aware that we are very, very, very small language community. And it has a reputation for being very difficult to learn Icelandic, very inaccessible, and Icelandic people are cold, they're not friendly, and they all speak English to you. And these things are all true, I think. But we also, we care very, very deeply about our language, and we're constantly afraid we're gonna lose it. So we tend to over-police it. So we're always, and foreigners who actually come there and learn the language, they're afraid to speak, because we will correct them, and it's a whole situation. I don't know. Was that an answer to your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Maarja, how do you think? Do we tend to over-police Estonian language? Because for me, it's been really a weird experience to have residents from Iceland here. We've been used to going around and telling the story that we're such a small nation, it's such a small language. Wait, you're smaller. but I guess we do share the similar feeling about the need to preserve our language and our culture. But do we have this kind of puritanism? Do we over-police our language? What do you feel?
I actually I'm not sure how to respond to it. So in a way, I think it is true. And I do think we also put off people from learning the language sometimes because we have 14 cases and so on. And so it's a difficult language to learn. And
don't start.
Yeah, don't start. So basically, yeah. And we also switched to English very quickly.
I've noticed.
So in a way, we do have the same approach to our own culture. But I also think we worry a bit too much about extinction of culture and language, because it's sort of a very stifling way to approach things. And I think we should put more energy into teaching people culture and language rather than being so protective of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. But again, yeah, I can't give you like a definitive answer to that, I think. But we should definitely have a conversation about it.
I think Estonia is doing so well because you're here like in the middle of like, you know, there are all these different empires like around you, and they've been coming through, and you've like kept your language and culture through like millennia. Whereas we in Iceland, like we until very recently, we were so isolated, you know, and then foreign influence started coming in and we sort of panic a little bit about it. It's like, yes, in one generation, everybody can speak English and nobody can speak Icelandic. So like you're a great example, like you just calmly hold on to your language here.
What about the Icelandic literature? Do you feel kind of like this history of isolation? Has it affected the literary process or how are they related?
Yeah, I mean, literature is like our heritage because we were so poor and we didn't have architecture or like, you know, just had very little in the way of like traditional sort of, you know, cultural, how do you say, like traditions. But we always had our manuscripts that are 1,000 years old and we can still read them. And so I think we like literature is like especially important to Icelanders, even if they don't read it, you know, they might, you know, individually, you know, not like it or something, but it's like a part of who we are very strongly. We're a nation of books, and that's, that's like our heritage.
But how would you describe the position of poetry in your society?
So like traditional poetry is actually like doing great, but it's like very uninteresting type of poetry. It's like very rigorous, like the meter is so rigorous. And we have these lovely communities of like mostly older men who like are continually just like on the spot, they put out poetry in response to, like in this classical style, in response to whatever is in the news that day, you know, which is a lovely thing, I think. And then, you know, there's a lovely poetry scene, like with young people. Like, I don't know, poetry it's niche, you know, like not a lot of people are going to come to your poetry nights, but that's okay. There's like a lovely scene and a lot happening actually. But they're two separate worlds. It's really funny. Like the old guys doing the traditional thing, they're not going to come to like the young people's poetry night and vice versa. It's like two separate communities. And I love both, but yeah.
But you are also involved in a very fascinating collective called the Imposter Poets. So I was wondering if you would like to say a few words.
Do we have time to talk about the collective? Okay, lovely. So it's I'm one member of this collective. It's called Svikaskáld. In Icelandic, it means sort of like traitor, literally. But we call ourselves imposters because we all originally came together around the concept of imposter syndrome. There's 6 people we met doing our MFAs in creative writing in the University of Iceland. And we decided that we wanted to just like, fuck it. We're just gonna get together and we're gonna write a book of poetry collectively and publish it in a month or something. And we did. It took a little more than a month, but we just put it out and we were all very impressed by each other's works, but very insecure about our own pieces. And then that was in 2017. And after that, we continued working together and we published, we're publishing our 4th book of poetry this year. And we also published a novel jointly. It's 6 women. And like, they are the most amazing people I know. It's just like become this amazing community, and we do a lot of teaching and events and different things like related to it, and it's all like sort of based around this concept of like not take yourself too seriously, like not get your ego or your imposter syndrome like in the way of creating. So we're like in each other's creative processes constantly. And we have our own sort of little traditions, and we go somewhere and put a timer on, and then we just write, and then after an hour or something we read to each other, and it's all so raw and it's so uncomfortable because it's bad at this point. And then we sort of steal from each other, we take inspiration and like jump off and evolve in this way, and then we end up with a poetry book or something, and it's just amazing. And through our teaching we find that a lot of people relate to this because they're aspiring to write, but they're very scared, they're not going to be good, and this is like a fantastic way to just like open it up and let the creative stuff flow.
Yeah. So I think the most interesting thing for me about this project, or like not even a project, but a community perhaps, or a collective, is that you write collaboratively, and this is so fascinating to me. So can you tell me a little bit more about how this process actually looks like?
Yeah. Well, I just think it's fascinating that like literature is this one art form where there's hardly any tradition of collaboration. It's just like the musicians are playing together and the dancers, and like even the visual artists are collaborating, but the writers are just like very alone in their little tower. And it's like related to, I think, this toxic concept of like this writer genius who's a man, and he's, you can't change a word after it's written. It's just it's just all this bullshit that we wanted to sort of break. Yes. So I mean, this is just how we do it. We take time away, like we do mini, getaways in like a country, in the countryside for just like a weekend or sometimes a week or something. And we just like divide our time between writing individually and then sharing, and then write again and pull inspiration and themes, and then we talk about what the themes are, and then in the evening we cook a very, very nice meal and have wine, and then we start to share the very, very bad things that we wrote that day that we didn't, we were even too scared to share during the day. And then we we edit and we read each other's things, so it's like we are writing individual pieces, each person, but they're like all sort of connected, and it's interesting because like opens up the process and it brings in new ideas they didn't have before. It's like very, very inspirational and fun and not lonely.
How do you decide when a text is ready?
So first thing we do, we decide when we're going to have the publishing party. So like we're going to have a book at this date, and then we work backwards from there. So like if the party is on this day, we need to have the book from the printer by this date, and then we just like walk our way back and we're like, okay, so we have 2 weeks to actually finish the manuscript. It's a punk. It's a punk thing. It's supposed to be like raw and fast and
It's very interesting.
Not over polished.
Well, I didn't feel that in Estonian scene we haven't had for a while like collective poetry collectives as such. Do you feel it's something that would work here?
Yeah, but I think it very much depends on the people. Yeah, and sometimes just people find themselves and collaborate and have fun, and it's very fruitful. Well, I think my own collaborations have been quite individualistic as well. So I just do my thing and connect it to the things that other people do. But I am currently looking for some kind of a fresh way of doing things. I'm not sure if I would actually have a hard time co-writing something, I think. So another thing that I did want to ask you was that how do you solve your differences? Because I would imagine that you do have differences. So how do you go about solving them?
Like, I don't know, like we're all like women in our 30s or 40s, and we're just like good at diplomacy. Like we also, like, each of us have, our own, projects that we are just doing solo. And then, when it comes to this, we just discuss, and we have some wine and we figure something out. And it's not, I think, it's also not as hard, because it's not like this is my project. I need to have this cover and I need to have it like this. We're already given up some of the control.
Yeah.
So that helps. But also, I don't know. Make it work.
How important is it if it's only a woman taking part in the
Yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's important, actually. Like, I would love to collaborate with men. Like, this is not a feminist agenda project, this is just like we happen to all know each other and admire one another's work. So we started collaborating. But like, from like the men I know, I think, the male writers, I think it might be harder to collaborate. Like, I get the sense that their ego's a little bit bigger sometimes. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I would really urge you to look up the manifesto of the Imposter Poets. It was published in LitHub in 2019.
We have a manifesto in English, on LitHub.
Yeah, it's a great text and really, really empowering.
We wrote it collaboratively.
Yeah.
How were the first, you published 2 collections or 3 as a collective?
3. Yeah.
So how have they been received? I think it was in the manifesto that the critics are not sure what to think of you.
Yes. Like, yeah. So we've had like very, very good response. Like, people seem to, like our work, and we have a lot of like excited students coming to our workshops, and it's like, I really, I love what you're doing, but like very few reviews, and sort of, like people don't know what to do with it. We had one review that had the headline like, all men should read this book, and we were like, okay, it's interesting take. It's not wrong, but I don't know. Like,
so even though you don't have the feminist agenda directly, people might tend to read it too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like, I guess, female themes emerge. We're all,
so
like,
you're women.
Yeah, we've been like, everyone in the group, like in the recent years, has gone through pregnancy and given birth and raising babies, and it's just like, it's all there, but it's not like, it's for everyone. It's just life. So, yeah, but I think we're doing fine. Like, our novel did very well. We got nomination for the most prestigious literary prize in Iceland. It was very funny. There were all the other authors at the ceremony, and then we as a group, like 6 people. Like, the system is not set up for this.
But how has your involvement in that collective changed the way that you write your own work?
Oh, it's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, it's a great question.
Does it feel more lonely now that you have like this different experience of creating? Or...
Yeah, I think it's very healthy to be like working on your own and then with people and then back on your own. Like, I think it's probably helped just to, because like, you need to have a community, whatever you're doing. So yeah, and then I have all these brilliant close friends who can read my manuscripts over, and I can I read their manuscripts when they're doing solo projects. So it's just all positive, all very good. And we have different styles. We're not it's just
I was wondering actually whether
Yeah.
it's like you're collective by how you function, but not necessarily aesthetically linked to each other. Or, so it's quite diverse what you do as a collective.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we collaborate outside. Like at one point we had an event that was like wine pairing with poetry, and another was perfumes with poetry and visual arts. So we're just like promiscuously collaborating. That's like our thing. What's your question? Like, how does it work practically, or what was the
The
question?
question was so that, as I understand, it's your poetry well, as a collective. You function in a sort of structure, but your poetry is quite different from each other. Each member's works, aesthetically, by style, by
yeah. And then we put it like all in the book, and there are no names, but you can look up the names in the back, so you can like play it as a guessing game.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, but we have been talking about poetry.
Yeah.
Let's hear some. Give me 30 seconds. I will put up the slides.
I think so. I do two, and then you do your nine, and then I do cross. Yes. Okay. Oh, it's an Estonian. It makes me so happy. Does everybody see this, or is my head in the way? Okay, so this. I'm going to read two poems from my 2021 collection, which is called Tandtaka, which means teething, like babies, when they're getting their teeth. And it very much revolves around the period when I was raising very young children, and also at the same time, it feels like, you're becoming a totally new person when you become a parent, and you're finding like new strengths, and you're dealing with maybe some old trauma. And so, the book is very much about that. And these are two little examples. And I'm reading in Icelandic, and you can follow along in Estonian. Fasaskipti. Ég elska börnin mín og börnin sem börnin mín elska og börnin sem elska börnin mín. Þau keyra kuldaskói gegnum ísinn þegar tjörnina hefur lagt. Þau elska að beita afli. Brjóta flísar úr ísingunni og halda þeim upp að andlitinu. Ég sé þau út gluggann, saltsleikt auga hússins. Þau sjá mig gegnum tært gler, ljósgul skíma og svo dimmir. Þannig tíminn skorinn í sneiðar, hvítar og svartar, skiptingin ekki bróðurleg, frekar en á öðrum gæðum. Frostið herðir á aðgreiningunni milli heima og breytir lygum í sannindi. Gerir göngubrú úr svokölluðu yfirborði vatnsins. Ef falskir botnar fela eitur eða fjársjóði, hvað felur þá falskt yfirborð? Börnin, en ekki ég, treysta gljúpri himnunni yfir handanheiminum þar sem andardrátturinn rennur í öfuga átt, en það stutt sem þau komu í gegn. Önduðu hringöndun meðan þau drukku, fljótandi fæði úr sykurbrjósti. Þau bíta í rendirnar, bryðja gler brjóstsykur stolt af styrk sínum. Í barnatannu vantar taugarnar fyrir tannköll. Það blómstrar ætiþyrstill í eldhúsglugganum. Enginn elskar veturinn eins og börnin mín. And before I read the second poem, I have English translations
For the people who do not speak Icelandic or Estonian.
I think actually this was published in German too at one point. And the second one is called Babushkat. Babuskur. Nýjustu rannsóknir í heimsfræði á vegum stofnunarinnar sem ég veiti forstöðu leiða í ljós að tíminn hafi byrjað árið 1981 og aftur 30 árum síðar. Miklahvell man ég vel, mýfiskan tíma þegar risar gengu og gulur broddur rann. Löngu áður en risaeðlur röðuðu sér í hillur, flugu frumefni blóðrás okkar beggja. Óljós form fyllti augu þín, þú varst munnur, seinna minni. Móðir þín utan heims og utanum. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Þórdís. This is wonderful. Go ahead and clap, please. So I will switch to Estonian now. Jätkan eesti keeles ja ma võtsin kaasa valiku luuletusi valmiva luulekogu käsikirjast, mis on siis kõik kirjutatud eelmisel aastal just nende samade mainitud residentuuride raames Leedus ja Göteborgis. Ja esimesed 4 luuletust on kirjutatud Kurasaarel märtsis-aprillis 2023 ja nad tegelevad siis keskkonnataju ja tunnetega. Ja tõesti see Kurasaar on imeline paik, seal on väga suured liivaluited, seal on imelised männimetsad, kõige kummalisemad männimetsad, mida ma kunagi näinud olen, sest et seal on mõned puud, mis ei kasva mitte sirgelt, vaid on nagu kasvanud viltu ja see annab väga kummalise metsakogemuse. Ja tuul ja meri ja laht on seal alati kuidagi väga lähedal. Ja see siis omakorda tõukas minu jaoks ka seda, tõukas tagant seda, millised tekstid seal sündisid. Luite värava ees. Ülestõusmine on allalaskumine läbi kaardus männimetsa, lainetava kanarpiku, suitsuste maa-aluste saalide. Metsa taga on värav, taevakõrgune tüün. Kõnnin paljajalu mööda pähkelpruuni liiva, soolane meretuul kustutab mu selja taga jalajäljed nagu sõprus kustutab üksinduse. Aegamisi harjuvad silmad päevavalgusega, kui hommikupäike joonistab luite nõlvale eredaid laike ja nende tontlikke pöördkülgi varje. Tume klaasias pinge kehas annab järele ja iga hingetõmbega on minus üha rohkem vabalt voolavat avarust. Tuleneelaja. Paberkuiva samblasse langeva tuletiku vaevu kuuldav sõsin peidab endas metsapõlengu hõõgub kuuma karjatust, mis põletab tummaks kõik teised hääled meie ümber, jättes kõlama kõrvu lukustava vaikuse. Me seisame tulekahju serval ja mängime mängu, mis on vana kui meretuul, süütu nagu hundikutsikas ja puhas nagu mooniõia punane verenire, mis valgub alla mööda mu reie sisekülge. Ma seisan tulekahju serval ja neelan kõrvetavat tuld. Kogun seda leekhaaval endasse ja hoian kinni nii kõvasti ja kaua, kui ma jaksan. Tuletorni juures. Poolsaare külises tipus, kus tiirude kitsad piketitiivad niidavad adrust meretuul, saadab tuletorn silmapiirile sõnumit pimedus, valgus, valgus või valgus, valgus, pimedus. Valgust siiski pisut rohkem kui pimedust. Varja mind, kui olen end liiga kauaks unustanud kalgi rajutuule kätte. Tee minust nõtke pilliroog, kes paindub madalale, kuid ei murdu. Kas olen kanarbik, kes ärkab vihmasajus metsapõlendikul ellu, anna julgust seista kindlalt, kui mu kohal kaardub raske laskuv lainekaar. Poolsaarel. Paremat kätt on silmapiiritu laht nagu taevakõrguse merikarbil pärlmutrine sisekülg. Me kõnnime mööda poolsaare liivast piirjoont, jabatud tajuvälja 4-lehelise ristikheinalehe kumerat kontuuri. Olen 36, aga alles õpin sügavuti tundma janu, mis kasvab seda suuremaks, mida rohkem ma maailma peopesast kogemusi joon. Mu ees kõnnib sõber läbi selge õhtu, kerge jalgne rebane. Ta sõnad on väljapoole pööratud siseruum, teise inimese ainuline mõistatuslik isedus, mille sügavusse rääkimata keegi meist ei näe. Niiske sõmar rannaliiv mäletab me jalajälgi, kuni jahe merevesi näppab nende kirjatähed endale. Ja järgmised luuletused on kirjutatud Göteborgis. Ma elasin seal novembris kuu aega Jonseredis, mis on selline väike linnaga peaaegu kokku kasvanud külakene ja kirjutasin seal tekste, mis mõtestavad minu enda küllaltki pikaajalist vaesuse kogemust, mis on siis ka seotud või juurdunud just Ida-Virumaal üleskasvamisse. Ja ma arvan, et seda omakorda siis tõukas tagant just selline sattumine võib-olla jõukamasse ühiskonda, aga ka ühiskonda, kus võib-olla need probleemid ei ole enam nagu nii akuutselt tingimata, kus on ka võib-olla natuke paremad turvastruktuurid inimestele üles ehitatud. Mäetipp ja tiivasuled. Mägi, mille tipus ma seisan, võib kõrvalt vaatajale näida oruna, aga sellele, kes on pärit maapõhjast, on ka kuristiku põhi kõrgustik. Pööran mäeharjal pahempidi pilvi, et näha nende sisekülgi lähemalt. Seal on hamba all krigisev muld ja taevast alla lastute tiivasuled. Seal on kehamälu raamatukogu ja julgus soovida võimatut. Pööran mäeharjal pahempidi pilvi ja voolin mudast tillukesi suid. Põletan nõrku savijalgu tugevamaks, vägevamaks. Nähtamatu käsi ja kinnas. Kapital järgneb sulle unenägudesse. Mark Fisher. Ma jälgin vabalangemise õõnsat tunnet, mis kruvib mu kehas vahel ka siis, kui jalge all on kindel pind. Tasane maa lainetab, vangub ja laguneb. Mina lainetan ja vangun kaasa, keerlen lakkamatult allapoole nagu sügisõhku auku puurib vahtraseene. Tal on täpselt selle haakneela kuju, mis hoiab kinni mu koolikoti suud millalgi põhikooli lõpus ja igatsuse kuju, mida tunnen uue terve lukuga seljakoti järele, milles peksleb nagu tihane traatpuuris iha rääkida hästi riietatud parfüümilõhnaliste klassikaaslastega ka siis, kui ma ei aita neil kirjutada kirjandeid. Heidan pilgu üle õla sinna, kus neoliberaalne turvavesi suunab ja vormib kõike, kaasa arvatud mind. See liigutab must tasakesi sõrmi nagu nähtamatu käsi inimhast kindas. Kampsun ja üksildus. Ma ei märganudki, kuidas brändiriiete ja värviliste vildikate vaiksed võtmed keerasid me vahel uksed kinni. Üksilduse müür mu ümber kasvab kõrgemaks. Selle tagant kostab naeruturtsatusi ja kivinet. Värvin loodusõpetuse tunnistöö vihikut viltpliiatsitega, mille õde täitis eile veega, et saaksin neid täna koolis kasutada. Need jätavad endast maha kahvatuid jooni, mis näivad korraga nii talumatult inetud. Istun koolipingis ja tunnen, kuidas välja veninud küünarnukkidega rohelisest kampsunist ja turult ostetud musta niidiga kannast parandatud botastest tungivad kehasse alanduse õngekonksud. Peidan jalad võimalikult sügavale tooli alla, kisun kampsunit seljast, aga see hoiab minust kindlalt kinni nagu teine nahk. Lähiajalugu ja kartulid. Valan põlluserval pooltühja kotti kollaste kartulite lopergusi aastatuhande nulle, mis veerevad mõlkis plekkembrist välja ja maanduvad üksteise kupil tuhmide metsatustega. Ema hoiab kotisuud lahti, tal on käes õhukesed kindad. Mul on kummikutes muld ja külm septembrituul näpistab läbi punaste puuvillaste dressipükste sääri. Mu kohal elektriliinides säriseb rahvuslik rikkus, fossiilenergia ebavõrdsust varjav metafoor, mis tõmbab enda õhku täis ja käib ka plauhti lõhki nagu põiest tehtud kuumaõhupall. Sellest maha jäänud auk tõmbab ääremaalt endasse elanikke ja raamatukogusid, toidupoode ja haiglaid, postkontoreid, koole ja tulevikke. Istun käsipõsakil köögilaua taga ja vaatan, kuidas ema koorib kartulitelt paberõhukesi koori, mis langevad ta karedate käte vahel sinisesse veelämbrisse. Aitäh! Give the floor back to me. Okay. So for our final reading, I am going to read a prose piece. I'm reading in English, so I'll just try to go slow and clear. I think it's about 10 minutes to read, so it's a short story. And it's called The Sea Gives Us Children. There are no boats on the island. Sometimes Guðrún and I go down to the beach just to let the wind beat our faces. We come home with salty lips and red ears. The wind wets our features until they become sharper. The similarities harder to discern. I always have a runny nose, but somehow Guðrún never does. She's made from sterner stuff. The beach is unsheltered, but even though I'm standing before the open sea with infinity all around me, I can't shake my claustrophobia. The sky hangs low and vast, like a lid atop the island, matte and white, milk, not water. I ask Guðrún if she thinks other islands exist. She shakes her head. The quiet hour begins at 7 o'clock. No one is allowed out later than that. I shore up my courage and complain. It isn't fair. My bedtime is not until 9. I'm quite capable of being careful while I play. Guðrún looks at me severely. I should know better. We have this rule for the sake of the little ones, who grow so quickly and need to go to sleep early. As I well know, we cannot take any risks, not with their souls. Which is why at 7 on the dot, we nestle down under our quilts with ice water and books on our bedside tables. We flick through the pages carefully as if they were butterfly wings. Our books are about other islands. Some are about boats. One of the girls I sometimes play with in the lava field says her brother has a telescope and has seen other islands. Her name is Karen, and I caught her lying more than once. She says we're forbidden to take the telescope out into the lava field, and that her brother doesn't want strangers using it either. One morning, Karen doesn't come out to play. I fool around on my own, climb, make mud pies, and decorate them with snapdragons and horsetails.
Later that day, I find out that a new child has arrived at theirs. I remember how the sea was that morning, how choppy it was, how the surf had suddenly shrieked aloud. It must have been at that exact moment that the child was born. A few days later, she comes out with Karen, a little sister, plucked up like a teddy bear and sturdy on short, fat legs. She stuffs her mouth with berries and peas into the crannies. Karen says she's called Angela. If there aren't any other islands, then where do the children come from? I ask Guðrún. Then where did Angela come from? Guðrún just shakes her head, disappointed in me. Do I really think infants swim over here from far-flung islands? It's unlikely, I have to admit. Angela can't even run. It's hard for her to walk a few steps without falling on her butt. Her body is so little, I don't get how a whole person can fit in there. I'm sitting in bed reading during the quiet hour, when all of a sudden I notice something moving atop my quilt. A tiny dot. I hold my breath and whisper for Guðrún, who hears me through the wall and glides into my room like the wind. She crouches silently by my bed. We cannot take any risks. For a long time, we say nothing, just watch the spider as it inches its way along the quilt. It disappears into a fold, reappears, and continues toward the footboard, along the side rail, onto the bed leg, and finally all the way down to the floor. It's an itsy-bitsy dwarf spider, dark brown with a bulbous belly that looks soft to the touch. It traces its way along the floorboards and eventually disappears into a crack in the molding. For a long time after, I sit there, frozen, and don't dare go to sleep, even though Guðrún's being nice to me. She strokes my hair and says I'll be safe while I sleep. But she doesn't understand what it is that I'm afraid of. After this, I stop complaining about the quiet hour. Karen says she's seen it when the souls begin their perambulations. Everyone shares a single bedroom at her house. Her brother is always early to bed, she says. I have my doubts. Karen's brother is a teenager like Guðrún, and she always goes to sleep long after I do. But then there's Angela. She's so little that she's always having to lie down. Karen tucks her in, sings until she sees her little sister nod off. Once her eyelashes are resting on her cheek, says Karen, it's only a few minutes before she sees the soul come crawling out of Angela's left ear. It spins a delicate thread, tiptoes weightlessly up the wall, and finds its way out through an open window. I shudder. What color is it? I ask Karen. Black, she says. Tiny, furry, and black as coal. Guðrún never has time to play in the lava field with me anymore. I try to get her to come down to the beach for a salt scrub from the wind, but she's busy. She sits in the big easy chair in the living room and reads. Angela's sick, so Karen doesn't come out either. The streets are empty and bathed in harsh sunlight. The wind is biting. I forgot to bring my mittens, so my hands turn red and stiff in the cold. I walk all around the village, but I don't run into anyone. Snot leaks into my upper lip, and I feel sorry for myself. I come home very late. Angela is dead. We wake to a dreadful, piercing sound, a throat choking on tears, screams that seem like they're ripping a teen boy's vocal cords to shreds. Karen's brother holds the body of his youngest sister and trembles like a skeleton. He tries to get some words out, but they're drowned in the other sounds, the ones coming out of him that he's not making himself. It doesn't take long to discover who's responsible. I was hoping they'd say it had been an accident, but the guilty party's been found. It's a boy, Guðrún's age. He's ugly with heavy brown bags under his eyes. He doesn't have any siblings and can often be seen down on the beach, throwing stones or burning driftwood. Karen says they saw him loitering around the house the night Angela died. He was waiting outside in the twilight, they say, just biding his time. He denies all charges, which is why no one believes him. Maybe if he said it had been an accident, Guðrún says, people would trust that, but how could anyone be so certain? We're sent outside while the older kids have a meeting. Karen doesn't want to go out in the lava field, so we go to the beach. We find 2 good sticks. I scroll a hopscotch board in the sand. Karen beats her stick against the beach stones so that it gradually turns into a blizzard of angry little splinters. Guðrún is cooking us porridge when I come home. We eat in silence and I try not to betray any emotion. Try not to let Guðrún see how I have to force the food down past my heart, which is lodged in my throat. After dinner, she lies on the sofa while I clean up. She looks older. With her eyes closed, she looks like a grown woman. And I think about the children in her books, children on big, faraway islands who all have mamas. But Guðrún isn't sleeping. She opens her eyes when I sit down next to her, looks up at the cupboard. There's a box. Don't, says Guðrún when I start climbing. But I'm not going to touch it. I just want to see this new thing that's appeared at the top of the cupboard. It's a small box made of clear plastic. I don't have to open it to see what's inside. A spider. Brown with yellow streaks on its back. It doesn't move at all. I look at the spider and hold my breath until I start getting woozy. Then all of a sudden, it wiggles a leg. The next time I look, the box is gone. Guðrún says she's put it somewhere I won't find it. She knows very well that I'm not a little kid, but we cannot take any risks. We have to look after the box for 1 week. After that, the next family will take over, keep it for a week, and so on and so forth, one after the other. When all the families in the village have done their shift, the boy will be released on a trial basis. It's not as much work this way, says Guðrún, not as much responsibility if we all take turns. It's not until later that I dare ask. Guðrún confirms what I've heard. The plan had been to kill him, a life for a life, but everyone had to be in agreement, and they weren't. Not Guðrún. For the first time in a long while, I managed to expel all the air from my lungs. I want to fling myself around Guðrún's neck. Instead, I nod calmly to show that I understand the seriousness of the matter. Of course, I say, we cannot take any risks. Guðrún gives me a strange look. Risks, she says. What do you mean? I go down to the beach and scream a little at the sea. The sky presses in on my head from all sides and it aches. The wind fills my mouth. I imagine myself leaping off a cliff, but not seriously. I go out into the lava field, out where Karen and I built a fort. It's well sheltered. Now that I think about it, it makes sense that Angela's soul came here in its sleep. She'd seen so little. What else would she have dreamed about? It wasn't an accident. And yet, who would have expected to see a spider out in the lava? It hadn't even gotten dark yet. I was looking for crowberries, and then, without warning, it crawled out of the heather and up onto the back of my hand, long-legged and quick. I was so shocked I fell over, and then There was this feeling in my fingers, this kind of crushing feeling. They turned into crushy fingers. I was hurt and wanted to avenge myself, to hit back. I didn't remember the little ones who needed to sleep so much. Didn't remember that Angela even existed. Guðrún would have helped me to remember. Karen too, but I was all by myself. Guðrún said something strange to me. We're free, she says. The sea gives us children, but no explanations, no rules. It's unbearable, intolerable. We're forced to make our own rules. But that means we can also decide what rules we have. We decide what kind of world this is. I had to be careful not to laugh. If we decided on it ourselves, the world wouldn't be this way. The cliffs, the sky, the smothering sea. Listen, said Guðrún. She'd worked herself up a bit. We can be the sea if we decide to be, because no one's saying anything else. If we say the rule is that we're sacred, then we're sacred. The moss is soft. I can feel now how tired I am. My eyelids flutter closed once again, and I let my head loll. Half asleep, I feel a tickle in my ear. I think about the spider with the yellow streaks and its legs and how they'd moved. Then I give myself over to sleep. The end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the reading. Thank you, Maarja. And now I think there can be follow-up discussions in free formats.
Okay.
Outside or inside, have a good time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you.